Hi, I'm Tim Howard, and I've got a really special guest today, Nico Palmu from a town in Finland called Hamina. He is the IT manager out there, and they've done something radically different that I'm just super impressed with. And I think everybody needs to hear this story. If you're in the IT world, I really believe this is going to transform, like they're at the cusp of transforming how IT is delivered, not just in Finland, but really across the world. And I don't say that lightly. What I see that they've been able to accomplish, improve, they've got some proven track record now, is really where a lot of IT teams are going to go for two reasons: to cut costs and to secure their environments better. And there's a lot of other advantages we'll talk about here in a minute. But welcome, Nico. We're glad to have you here.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here and a little bit humbled to be here.
Honestly, you may not feel it, but you're a rock star in my world. And I understand you're even somewhat on the speaker circuit in Finland now, right? You're getting calls from all kinds of people.
For the last maybe 6 months, I've been getting pulled into a lot of pretty big discussions, which are really a strange thing for a town. Usually, these are businesses who are doing things with very big budgets compared to towns and public sector. So it's been really interesting, and I'm actually going to be in Finland, one of the main speakers at the Public Sector Executive 2024
Yeah.
seminar. So and it's all from our journey.
I want to review some of the successes that I've heard about. So one of those is to be able to enable access to especially legacy systems from virtually any network. I mean, that right there is one goal that companies have, and you've got like all these other things that you've achieved. Another one is allowing employees and even citizens to securely access work from virtually any device on any network. One of the things that you were able to do was enable Chromebooks to be used across your enterprise and actually start eliminating the Windows desktops. You were able to do that without disruption. So I know there's a lot of folks that have kind of a Windows biased, but it sounds like you were able to do that without disruption. That One of the other huge benefits was that you were able to radically secure both the enterprise network and the devices. And then you were also able to improve the computing speed, especially of the legacy systems. And all, any one of those could have been just like a massive accomplishment. And a lot of people will say, yeah, I can do that too. But here's the kicker is that what I understand is you cut your overall IT expenses by about 50%. Was that really true?
Last year, we actually revised the calculations based with the devices, and it actually does go to the 50%. So it is
Wow, that
the,
is
the
amazing.
machine prices are going. It's something that we've been benefiting. Is like the high scale machines. They've been getting more expensive, but then these Celeron 8 gigs of RAM, these pretty basic Chromebooks, their prices have actually gone down.
Yeah.
So we're,
Well,
we're kind of riding that.
and I want to jump into that because that to me is transformational. I mean, I think it goes beyond 50% because the reality is that it simplifies so much of what's going on because of the security that's built in, and now you don't have to buy hardware. I mean, you can use the old stuff that you're already using. So what I want to know from you, why did you even start going down this road? What was the original problem that you were trying to solve that made you start thinking outside of the box?
Actually, my journey with this big transformation started when I came into this position. My background was a lot of pure Microsoft. I'm a certified Azure technician by heart and from my background. So I knew I was really deep in VMware, Citrix, Microsoft, Azure, and all that. And I actually had very little experience with Google as a whole, and this whole mindset that they are going with. And it was actually interesting when I came into my current position. I was presented with a budget which was very strict, to say at least. I was given pretty much free pass. You do whatever you. This is your budget. Do whatever you can, but we expect pretty much results. We expect you to be able to sort of shift things, because we knew from all the way from 2017 that our IT costs they've pretty steadily gone up.
Mhm.
And then when we mirrored that to what have we gained from that things going up, well, virtually nothing. It's all coming from different IT service costs, which have been getting more and more expensive. And we've been basically beating up the dead horse that it's not producing anything more, but we're just piling more money on it and hoping that it might one day. I told my team, there are no stupid ideas. Let's boil things down to the pretty basic principles. None of you have to be an expert in any of this. Just lay it out. And we actually just took in different services that we have, and we all asked the question on each of the service: why do we have this? Why is it built this way that we have it? And then we asked the same question on every single service, and we kept asking it till we got an actual answer that the whole team agreed on.
What a great exercise.
It actually showed out really, really huge problems with just pretty basic processes that we'd been doing for years. And then we started sparring with each other. How do we implement Chrome OS? Where does Chrome OS come into picture in this all? And we actually, with my team, we jumped into Chrome OS purely as the first enterprise users in our environment. And so we got the really bleak picture of where we are now, and what can we do? What are we missing? What is
you were a Windows shop beforehand, right?
Yeah. And I actually had to personally take a really, really hard deep dive to Google and their Google Workspace, Google Cloud. And by that time, by the end of 2022, it became pretty clear that without any kind of virtual aspect, it's not going to work. Chrome OS by itself will not sort of carry us anywhere, since we knew we had legacy systems. We had these very specific needs that need to be met, and we can't do it simply with Chrome OS.
So you evaluated some virtualization technologies, right?
Yeah, we had really interesting conversations. I was probably one of the first to raise the question, why do we need AD? And I was told the first answers I got was that you just need it. And I said, what if we have Google Workspace and our users are there? What then? We started testing out, hey, we can do what can we do with Google Workspace? Is this going to carry us anywhere? Can we live with it? Does it answer our need? I was told that, hey, you can have with AD, you can have basically unlimited amount of possibilities. Then I asked the question pretty much in everything regarding Microsoft. My question was, why do we need this? Is this scaled to our need or not? And because that's basically where the price came from for us, was the fact that we're scaling to something that we never use, we never need, we're never going to use, but we're still riding on that same billing, and it's pretty much strangling us totally. Pretty clear picture for me that we don't need an AD. Absolutely no need. Everything from custom attributes to different syncing techniques, different integrations, it's all there. From that point on, we shifted our focus. What can we do to lift away from the AD? We tested at the same time in the background. We tested different virtualization techniques. I had a really long background with VMware, with Citrix, so I knew from a get-go that those are no-go. I knew that the footprint is going to kill us if we.
Yeah. So why were those a no-go? Because that's the standard for most people in virtualization, right? Having hypervisor and having all your Citrix and VMware servers and all that stuff in the background.
Yeah, it was pretty clear to me that the footprint of those choices are going to essentially stay the same. Things are not going to change It's just going to be pretty much the same of what we had, and it's not going to bring us anything. Expected expenses will follow us no matter if we have Chromebooks or whatever the endpoint is, if the core is still the same. So I started sparring with my team about it. What are the different ways to lean this out? How do we make sure that even the core systems, the core templates are so lean that it's like how can we limit all this extra stuff? What I fell in love with absolutely was the core system. Everything runs on containers, everything is lift and shift. So it's really low maintenance. It's been amazing ever since.
And so your early pilot, what were the early realizations?
I'd say the biggest one was I had heard and I had used containers before, very little. So I knew the concepts, but I had never really sort of used them in a production environment. I didn't really think about them at all. And now when I was presented that, hey, our whole system writes on containers, even the template background machineries containers. That was probably the biggest biggest aha experience for the whole team, was the fact that, hey, if we need to, how mobile the background is. I told my team that I've lived with Citrix and VMware for most of my career, and I knew that if you need to make a change to the core systems, it is a very heavy beast to move. But now we had containers that I can have with one command to actually pull off, and I can just reshift to whatever. I was saying that, oh my God, this is like. And then when we took into all the Docker Hub automatic Docker file image creations by night, all these things that we can just have rolling with zero admin involvement. This is especially the kind of environment that we need. And we had to match our old environment. We still had, and we still have some Windows machines that are being used out, and as they exit, users shift to Chromebooks. But we knew that we still sort of have to carry the old stuff with us. We can't just overnight shift totally. So
that's what I wanted to dive into. Is originally you're just trying to enable Windows desktops and Windows applications. And so tell me some of the legacy stuff that you were able to do that helped you enable that environment.
Yeah, we knew that we had a lot of sort of critical areas where any kind of step away from the old system would have to be sort of almost invisible to the user. We took our time building a sort of a new revision replica of the user's software palette that we knew that they needed. And we actually onboarded it while they were still on their Windows machine. So they jumped into from their old Windows machine before the Chrome OS. So we kind of sneakily brought in the new environment. So for the user, it was a really at first confusing, since it was a browser. It wasn't their normal desktop. So they basically just jumped through their browser into the whole new environment. But then after that sort of initial shock, people were like, hey, I can do everything like I used to and even faster. And that was probably one of the biggest things that we sort of tried to avoid as long as possible, the hard shift. So there would not be the hard step from Windows to straight to Chrome OS, because we knew that at that point the user is going to be panicking like, oh my God.
It sounds like you beautifully kind of transition them very slowly so that they could adopt this whole paradigm shift that I'm used to my Windows. I don't want to let go of my Windows. And next thing you know, they're not using Windows. They don't even realize it.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest things regarding this was our teachers. Their system that they use for student information and handling all that comes with that. It had existed only on Windows for pretty much decades. And now we actually, while we did this whole transitioning, we had me and my colleague, we were building it at the same time on Linux. we were doing it on a Linux desktop, and we actually managed to bring the teachers in, shifting from Windows to Linux, and now they're using Linux desktops. And they shifted during the big shift, and most of them didn't even really realize. They just thought that, hey, the visual aspects changed a little, but all the software looks the same. With the browser, we were able to sort of bring it in slowly with the existing hardware without the user getting too panicky about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always a big challenge. And so one of the things that you were able to do too when you made that shift was be able to give people access to, again, like their desktop and their applications, but be able to do it from anywhere on any network.
Yeah, though at the moment we are limiting it to our Chrome OS kiosks. So those kiosks are one-time sessions that they have, and actually, sort of while we were rolling them out, I had to demonstrate that how much I believe in the security now. I said that this is the first system in my whole career in this kind of public setting where I am comfortable inputting my bank stuff in it.
Wow.
So that really resonated within our organization, since normally I've been really outspoken about the public use machines, that they should not exist.
But these are destroyable desktops, right? That every time somebody logs in, they literally get a fresh image that is completely destroyed. So if you put your own login information, you could put your own banking information, there's nothing on that desktop that could ever be reused. Is that right?
Yeah. So we took this same concept even with our Windows machines. The whole point was that I kept saying from my background that the only secure Microsoft environment is an environment that doesn't exist. So it's like the endpoints. If we dive into endpoint security, I was saying that the endpoints, the security implementation and the keeping up with the security, the amount of work it requires is astronomical. And I was saying 4-people team, that's never going to happen. So we toyed with the concept that, hey, now we have containerized desktops on Linux side. How do we bring this to the Microsoft side? Right now we have our Windows machines the same. The user logs out and the machine is gone. It's one-time use only, and we have persistent data points that we've set out for different software. So we knew that some software will require it, but most of our critical data is on Google. So Google Drive is the big thing, and you can access it from any device. So it helped a lot with the Microsoft side.
So let's talk about that security. What do you still need to have that this solution doesn't provide?
We had the old environment breathing pretty heavy on-prem Microsoft ideology. Yeah. And when we mirrored it to our new environment, we're thinking, what do we even need a sort of an on-prem network for? We laid it out on paper. What do we actually require from the network? And pretty fast, it came clear that all our devices only want to go outside, or they want to go to our Google Interconnect, which is the sort of our private pipe to the Google data center. But it kind of changed the whole ideology on what the network is. So we didn't really have to make an open on-prem network. We kind of laid out, hey, what do we need? Some routes that we need to route traffic to the Google Interconnect, but mostly data just goes out. So it was kind of maybe a little bit of a zero trust concept, where we don't trust any of the devices to talk to each other.
On your devices, are you using any antivirus or any endpoint protection of those devices itself?
No, the Chrome OS devices are completely by themselves, and our sort of a big brothery type of system that we have in the background, we utilize Darktrace.
Yeah.
So we onboarded Darktrace pretty early on in 2023, and we saw that with our cloud-only outlook on everything and multiple tenants, thousands of user accounts, how are we going to realistically handle this in any way? So we POC'd Darktrace, and it was pretty cut and dry from that. it was pretty much sold the moment we went through the POC, because it answered into every single question. It ticked every box that we needed ticking. It looks at our device management. It's following our user accounts. It doesn't care about the network, because the user theoretically can use every service that they have from the company from their home. But it needs to follow the user. It can't follow the device. The device can be whatever. So it was kind of a big shift in that ideology too, when we looked at our old legacy environment, where it was all these antivirus clients, and then centralized the management to that and things like that. So Chrome OS gave us a lot of freedom with this, since they are by themselves so secure, at least for now. If you need to keep adding security layers, it means that the core is not okay. Like when we were planning out with our environment, was the whole fact that, like I pointed out, was the attack surface minimization. When you minimize, you cut it to the absolute minimum. You don't have to have 60 people sitting and looking at a SOC screen and looking at logs and panicking and what happens. It doesn't matter. There's no attachment to anything. If the machine is compromised, so what? It can't do anything. The user logs out, the session dies out, and that's it. With Darktrace, we've been able to even go deeper. We went to the API level, where we can, with Google Drive, we can have user accounts specifically looked at and limit the sort of a chance where you could theoretically, with an API, you could start encrypting files from Google Drive. Well, we went with Darktrace. We deep dive into the API and we look at the user, how they normally use it. Well, normally they use it through Chromebook. The API calls look exactly the same every time. So we were able to tell Darktrace, hey, this API call, if the call looks anything unlike what this looks like, user gets frozen. I find it really disturbing even to hear that we're still having security teams looking at server data, looking at server files, looking at things like this. Like we're still doing what we were doing like 20 years. Like I've been saying to my neighboring cities, that it doesn't mean that you need to shift everything to Google. Just think different. if you want to use the Windows desktop or laptops, fine, but just look at this. Just even from a Windows standpoint, even if this Windows laptop, think about what you could do. Think about how much of the admin work you can eliminate, how much security issues you can eliminate. So what if the Windows machine gets compromised? It doesn't.
You don't even need to be on a current version of Windows anymore.
No, yeah, that's exactly the point, that you can be whatever. We're testing next week, I think, building a sort of a access hub for our local water utility sector. They've been using endpoints with VPNs, so every endpoint is basically a danger spot. So now it's a locked out system where they can't access internet. They can only see and access, monitor the water stuff from within their building, from within their own work environment. So that's like I like to call it extremely secure, because it means that their device needs to be compromised, their user account has to be compromised, and then they still, even after that, they need to know where to go.
Within your environment, you've been able to eliminate a lot of older technologies, right? I mean, sounds like you eliminated Citrix, VMware, a hypervisor environment, antivirus, those kinds of things. What else have you been able to extract from the environment that now this solution solves?
I'd say, like with the network, we were able to eliminate the old network style of opening ports. A lot of ports that Microsoft and the on-prem environment needed to talk to each other. Even the clients themselves needed to sort of talk to each other and see each other. And we were able to eliminate that totally. We just need internet access. That's it. They just want out. So that was one of the biggest things, that even if theoretically one of the Chromebooks would get infected with something, it can't touch anything, even though it's sitting next to 100 machines. It doesn't really get to talk to them. so that was there. sort of at the attack surface, if you want to call it, it was eliminated and sort of contained. We were able to pinpoint things with service accounts and things, so that Darktrace, for instance, has a really clear view of what's happening. And if that service account, for instance, gets compromised, it does one action beyond what it normally does, and that's it. It's game over for the account. So that it's nicer to shoot fish in a barrel than in a pond. So
yeah, that's a great analogy, because when you think of, at least the numbers out there show 85, maybe 90% of attacks happen at the end user device, and you've just removed that out of the equation. I mean, are you confident that you've removed that out of the equation?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident. We've been looking at the numbers, and are just these security issues regarding endpoints and user accounts, ever since the shift, they've dramatically lowered. Like, this used to be an every year kind of report going through, how did this happen, and diving into it, and there's this port, there's this service that is basically a stepping stone for bad stuff. We kind of took the whole part and straight into the trash.
Tell me about, how has this changed performance, and especially of legacy applications? Have they noticed any difference?
Yeah, I'd say the first comments that I got when more and more people were onboarded, pretty much the first comments were, how can this be so fast? Because it was the same, essentially the same Windows Air or environment, that it looked to them the same. In the background, we were able to utilize the auto scaling on a really, really nice way. So we could profile users based on groups, and we could have, like for now, we have Adobe use and things like this, video editing, things like this. We have them as separate groups. So if a user from that group wants to do stuff, it will automatically provision machine based on those specs. So we can push, for instance, a really, really heavy duty machine for that specific instance for the specific time, instead of having it always there, or having to invest in a really heavy
video editing, which is a really high computing power, and they can actually do that over this system.
Yes, and it's something that we actually initially started as we were just toying around. How can we do this with auto scaling? Hey, how fast is this going to be if we just dump 50 cores and 200 gigs of RAM? How is this going to push through like doing a 2K video? And we started looking at the numbers that, hey, what if the user can do this all when they just click on compute, and things will happen, like, instead of having to click on it on a lower spec machine and having sit around and wait for it. So we grasped on the whole different performance thing by a little bit, even by accident. When we're looking at the auto scaling possibilities, we started thinking that, hey, how much do our users sit on waiting around the machines to do this stuff? What if we can just have, for this instance, the machine be like a burst speed? You just click on compute and it's like, bam.
You could then, with that kind of concept, right, take a Raspberry Pi and be able to put a big screen on it, and now you can push as much computing power to that as possible. Like, you don't have to buy i7s, and you don't have to buy, these huge desktops anymore. All of that can be offloaded to a $200 computer that gives you a browser.
Yeah, I've been saying to my superiors that now we are at a place where our students, with their even less than €200 Chromebook, has the same security, the same computing power all across our organization. We all have essentially the same computing power at will from our closest data center from Google. It's literally in the fingertips. And this was actually a funny thing. I was earlier this week, I was in a meeting with a couple of Microsoft representatives, and I have to say I got a lot of strange looks when people were using Surface tablets and like Surface machines, which are essentially pretty expensive stuff.
Yeah.
compared to normal computing. And I took my Samsung S24 and I plugged it into the screen with the USB-C and my wireless mouse, and I was actually doing video editing with my phone. people were freaking out about the fact that how is this possible? How are you doing this? And then I had to lay it out that, hey, we're doing this, and this is something that we've been working on for the past 2 years, and it's finally here, and we're doing it pretty nice. And this is actually something really nice for our workforce, since right now they can essentially use their work phone for absolutely everything. They don't need the Chromebook. The Chromebook is just a device that we enable the users to have, but it's not a requirement. I can use even my personal phone to do everything. Only thing that I do need to is sort of identify myself with my corporate ID and all that. But I have the same computing power. I don't really need all these fancy toys.
That's even taking it to another level that maybe we don't. I mean, literally, you've got all that you need right in your hand, and all we need to do is project it so that we can work in a bigger screen.
Yeah, and I actually demoed this on my personal Samsung TV. So it has a browser in it. So I was actually able to use a Windows desktop and Linux desktop from my TV. It wasn't very handy, I have to say, but it works. And because
That's
the device itself
incredible.
has very little requirement. It leans very heavily. I'd say probably the biggest downside from all this is the natural fact of it relies heavily on network. So
Yes.
if your internet connection is bad, then it is going to be a bad experience. You can on the fly, you can change the preferences on how the image quality is, so you can work around it. But I have to say the experience is not very great if you're not really bad network connections.
You know, I have tested it as well on my phone, and I've even used the hotspot on my phone to enable my laptop. And I'm actually really surprised it works. It works really well, even with just a mobile hotspot. You know, it doesn't draw near as much network as I actually thought it was going to.
This is something that I looked at when we were initially in the POC. I was wondering, how is it that you can push this much data, this much stream through this little network? And they actually really nicely explained it to me that it's not that much data actually on the stream. It's pretty basic.
Just
And
pixel changes.
the heavy streaming side is actually in the actual data center network. So theoretically, all the heavy lifting is happening where it can happen. So it's
So let's talk about cost. How big a team did you have in order to achieve all of this? Where you had like 100 consultants and
it's a 4-man team, including myself. So it's 4 people, and this is one of the biggest selling points to my neighboring cities and towns is the fact that 4 of us can do it. Then towns and cities that have IT departments of 10, 20, 30, 40 people, there is no excuse that they can't do it. It's about the comfort level and the fact that you just don't want to do it. It's that simple. I've been saying that it's not all rosy. A lot of planning, a lot of really technical stuff, but we also in Finland we have a little bit of a difficult time with Google in a sense that everything is so Microsoft. So we have very few companies able to jump into this same ideology that we were riding on. That was one of the things that most of the work that we did had to be done by us. There was no one else to do it. When it comes to numbers, I'd say we already have numbers on 22 and 23, and it is going as estimated. It actually is going better than estimated.
You were creating this from scratch, right? So you're going through and inventing ways to use this. Today, if you started this process over, and because now all that you know, how long would it take you to put this in place?
I'd say 2 to 3 months. not even that. I'd say it depends a lot on the legacy side. I keep pointing out that the legacy side is the big factor. Everything, all that modern stuff that we did was really, really fast and really efficient. So it was that would probably, with the modern side alone, that would probably take me maybe a week.
A
But
week to transform your environment 1 week, right?
yeah, as long as we don't touch the legacy, if I don't have to carry the
Yeah.
legacy with me, but the legacy side was really, really a struggle because it had all the old data centers, network stuff, all the old software, all the connections, how we're going to do this, licensing issues, all of this had to be kind of taken into account. So it was a really heavy beast to connect to.
You change your licensing, right? So, I mean, there was so much of this that you kind of invented along the way, because now aren't you, instead of doing annual licenses for Windows, isn't it more of a consumption-based licenses as well now?
Yeah, we actually use a lot of our licensing regarding Microsoft off of Google's pay-as-you-go, since that was an absolutely amazing model for the fact that if we think that the device is going to live only for a couple hours, then absolutely not do we ever want to jump into a yearly or annual agreement of any kind, because that will lead into the over expenditure. So we will pay more than we actually use. So that was one of the big things that we wanted to scale with our use in terms of hardware, licenses, networks, everything. So I've told Google many times that I hope that they never let go of the pay-as-you-go model, because that's
Yeah.
that's really like the holy grail for us as a town, because we knew that we work office hours only and we have long holidays and all that. So why would we have this really heavy server farm in the background trying to serve people who are not even at work? So we wanted it to go with us. If we're on holidays or the servers don't exist in the same mass, there is the readiness to serve, but it's just a readiness. It's not, if we start pushing in more and more use, it scales really nicely with us. So it is absolutely ready to onboard if everybody just runs back to the office and start working.
We shifted that workload into the cloud. And so didn't your computing costs just skyrocket? I mean, when you're talking about you've lowered your overall cost, but you've shifted. So tell me a little bit about how you've leveraged this auto scaling, and what do the costs really look like today?
Yeah, so like I said, the auto scaling is amazing. Without that, the overall cloud costs would have been significant. But right now, like, we have machines that exist for an hour, and if you think about a machine spec living for an hour, it's like what, less than €1. So it's like, when you boil it down to just hard math, it's really, really inexpensive if you do it just for the use. I've shared some numbers, and I've compared to our old environment. We had approximately 50 or 60 servers running constantly with our investments in them. So they were running full speed all the time, waiting for really heavy heavy duty work. And we paid probably half of what we pay now, and our normal server use is approximately 150, 170 servers daily.
Wow. So you
So we actually
tripled
cut
the
it in half.
servers, but you've lowered cost by half.
Yeah, yeah. Big factor in all of this is the fact that we can use background services as a service. A lot of data stuff with Drive, email with Workspace, with Gmail, all that. So we can have them as a service. ADFS completely eliminated. We can have Workspace that handles all our SSO. We were able to eliminate really these big farms that have existed, like clusters. Like, with our ADFS was consisting of what, 6 servers. Now it's none. So these are really like the comparisons that I've been putting, that like these really old legacy things that we think are really needed, always needed. If you really boil them down, what you need them for, and start looking at options, you really do have options. Even Azure has options now. You can basically just take the SSOs away. Maybe not every organization is as ready to move into the cloud with full force, but I've been saying to everyone what we saw and what we experienced with the hybrid model was that it was absolutely horrible. The hybrid model was pretty much the poison in regards to finances. So if I've been saying that if you want to do something, do it or don't do it. So make the choice of either you're in the cloud or you're not.
Kind of the final question is capital expenditure. It doesn't sound like you really had to come out of pocket with, okay, I got $1 million budget, so I'm going to start this project. It sounds like you were able to just kind of do it with operating expenses. Is that a fair assessment?
Exactly. So basically, I had the budget that I had. I knew from a get-go that we're not going to get any extra money for it. So we had to work with what we got. And as we went ahead, of course, we did a lot of work initially with getting rid of some legacy systems.
How much money did you free up that can now be used to offer up better social services?
For now, for this year's budget, for instance, we lowered our IT costs about 400,000 euros to public services elsewhere, away from the legacy support. And that's starting third year of our journey. So
one thing that I'm hoping I can bring to the table is that because of all the stuff you've done, can we help them like radically change how they deliver their services, which elevates the level of service, but dramatically reduces the cost so that they can offer up better services, right?
I already offered to the local hospital here or the healthcare sector here that I could put up a demo for them. It takes me like an hour to have them a demo that they could have with a Chrome OS device that they could log
within their own system.
Yes, that they could log
in their own
into
system, take an hour, and you can actually have access to it. Yeah.
I was saying that it's so straightforward with modern tech that I don't know, it's appalling at times to see how little things have really progressed.
And I will tell you, the biggest challenge that we come up against are folks that are just comfortable in what they're doing today. They don't want to make a change because they don't want to make upset the apple cart. They're afraid of the users. They're afraid of the impression they're going to, and they don't want to step outside of the normal, this is how we do it in IT because we've done it that way for 20 years. And that's what I applaud with you and your team is that you stuck your neck out saying, I believe we can do this different. And I loved how you had analyzed all of the applications up front. And you said, why do we need each one of these things? And you started eliminating things. And what are the new possibilities, the brainstorming that went on, and just radically thought differently about how you deliver technology. And Nico, I'm telling you, I think you're on the cusp of literally changing how we deliver IT, not just for municipalities, but for corporations, universities, hospitals, governments. And you can reallocate that money to better resources. So this is a containerized workstation. It is on-demand video from any device. Nothing is required on the device at all. With a single link, I can log in to an entire workstation. No Citrix, no VMware, no hypervisor is needed at all. This is 100% video delivery through any browser. You don't even have to have an updated browser. And here you go. I've got my Windows desktop. I don't even have to have Windows on my desktop to have a Windows desktop. And it looks just like your normal desktop, right? This is a pre-built desktop. I've got all my Word. I can open PowerPoint. This thing works faster than most desktops. So it's just popped up a whole brand new version of Word. I can do PowerPoints. And very quick, very snap. Look, PowerPoint had just opened up. So these are all containerized windows, unbelievably fast. But here's the key of what this IT manager did that's so radically different, is that he started eliminating the need for Windows, that he is now delivering his applications as apps, just like you would on your iPhone. So if we go back to all those apps that you saw around the outside, here's all of the apps. This is all you really need. Think about how your phone operates independently. If I want Word, I can open up Word. I can do all this. I attach it to my OneDrive. All of my documents are right there. In fact, when I originally set this up, I logged into my OneDrive and my Google profile, and everything I needed was right there. And there's my Word. That's in a completely separate, immutable workspace. So if I go back to workspaces, I can open up an entire Linux box. I can open up multiple different Windows instances if I want to, and nothing can cross-pollinate at all. It dramatically improves security, because I can open up any malicious link or ransomware in this box, and it can't go anywhere. You no longer need any endpoint protection at all. I know that's hard to believe, but you don't need it anymore. You still need to protect your servers and your cloud, but you don't need endpoint protection. This is a really quick overview on what we can do with it. There's a lot of things that you can build in where your AD or your single sign-on all works within this session. But I hope you found that this is at least interesting and it's worth checking further into, because you eliminate so much of the infrastructure and support infrastructure that it takes to manage end users, and all that is centralized in one place. So that's how you remove 50% of your operating expenses. You no longer have to buy expensive Windows devices. You can use cheap Chromebooks and have all the power in the world right there at your fingertips. So if that's somewhat interesting to you, get a hold of me. Let me give you a test drive of it and see if it's right for you. Maybe it's not right for the corporation, but maybe it's right just for your contractors that are working remote. Maybe it's right for developers who aren't on site. How can you enable them to be able to have a full desktop without you shipping any hardware anymore? It's worth a look. Take care.